Well, we have a very significant next hour on RSN because as part of Responsible Gambling Awareness Week, we have a forum in the studio and we have a number of special guests, and also we'll be speaking to Harry Taylor from the Cats after 8 o'clock. As I said, all about Responsible Gambling Awareness Week. Let's introduce the panel. We're going to start with Leigh Broxham because he's sitting next to me from the Melbourne Victory. Leigh, thanks very much for being a part of the forum.
Pleasure to be here.
And what's your exact role in all of this? Because I know the Melbourne Victory have been a very strong ambassador for Gamblers Awareness Week.
Well, I suppose Adrian Leigh, he's the major ambassador for the club. At the moment he's getting married, so I come down this morning, and there's a few of us that have been doing stuff throughout the year, and just helping out, and obviously like we've had Daniel come down and speak to us a few times, and we're just here to do anything we can and raise the awareness for it.
We're talking about Daniel. We talk about former Melbourne player Daniel Ward. Daniel, your role in Responsible Gambling Awareness Week is quite significant because you've got your own stories to tell, which we'll get to shortly. But just in your role now, what are you doing?
Yeah, like Leigh, just getting out there, spreading the message about it's not an anti-gambling message at all. It's more about responsible gambling and setting limits and that type of stuff. And yeah, obviously I've got my own story that people can sort of make a correlation with, and just getting out there and getting the message across that if there is trouble with people, that there is help, and just about being responsible with gambling.
And we've got Con Nikitas as well, who is from the Australian Leisure and Hospitality Group. And Con, I guess you guys play a very important role because in a sense you're sort of encouraging people to have a gamble, but to do it responsibly, I guess.
Yeah, that's correct. And it's unfortunate I'm here with a lot of good talent here, and I don't bring that talent to the table.
You told me you played 150 games for Richmond.
Yeah, well, I wish I did. They don't travel too bad at the moment. But
you remind me of Jakey King, actually.
I could probably give him a bit of a competition on push-ups at the moment too. So, look, you're right. We play a pretty important role. We partnership with the Victorian Gambling Foundation, who's running the week, and it's now in its 8th year. For us, it's about educating our staff, our customers on, as Daniel said, the messages of the week about knowledge, balance and control about your gambling, and setting a limit and ensuring those fundamentals are put in place for our customers.
Con, I think that's fair to say it'd be a huge challenge to get that right. Because as much as you're trying to promote pub tabs, for example, to get people through your doors, you've got to have that balance of making sure they don't overplay it when they do have a bet.
And Mick, you're 100% right. It's not just pub tabs. Our group owns over 350 hotels in Australia, over 12,000 electronic game machines. So the message there is not just in the sports bet arena, but it's also part of the electronic game machine arena, and getting that message across is a tough one when you've got a lot of transitional staff, casual staff, and a lot of traditional customers, moving through your doors.
Before we get to Daniel, and said Daniel's got some really interesting stories to tell and hopefully some valuable lessons to be learnt, but I'm just interested, Leigh, in with the Melbourne Victory and I guess the players' awareness of what goes on when it comes to gambling on football matches, and also we think of spot fixing or match fixing in virtually every sport now. Yeah. The education that you get in that, I mean, it's quite extensive now for an athlete to be aware of what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. I think we do get educated from a young age. All sorts of stuff. Get educated on, and one is obviously gambling and the do's and don'ts, and obviously I do gamble on other sports occasionally, and responsibly. Seems Responsible Gambling Week, and it's everyone's aware of it at the club, and if people do have any issues or anything like that, boys do recognise it, and with the right avenues that people can go through if they do need help.
Now, I think it was last year, or maybe even been the year before, we had one of your former teammates, Grant Brebner, in here, and he obviously went through a tough time as well. And what he was saying is the importance of teammates or just friends in general of actually supporting people through that sort of thing. Did you play a role in that, or some of your teammates play a role in helping Grant? Yeah,
definitely. I think there was a few of us that were fairly close to him and knew what he was going through. Obviously, some closer than others, and It wasn't easy for him, and I think he's on a good road at the moment. Still speak to him occasionally. Obviously, he's moved on now, so it's hard. But that's a classic example of why they are educating young kids. And obviously he's going around still and doing his part, trying to help players as well.
It's a real different world we live in the world of sport, particularly when you're a participant, Lee. I'd like to know what you think about the exposure all the corporates get at some of the big A-League games on the scoreboards, for example. We see it at AFL now. There's always odds thrown down the faces of the public and also down the playing group who are watching or participating in the game. Is there room for that at the elite level?
How do you mean, like?
Well, is there room for promotion and always exposure of Melbourne Victory $1.05 or whatever there is?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like I said, once players are educated on it, it's just kind of something that, you see it like, I watch another A-League game or something, there's odds all over the TV, everywhere you see it, and, it's just something that you've never bet on and everything, so it's something that it's not like you miss it or anything. So it's I suppose it's part of it now. It's the way modern society's going. So no, you just obviously have to be careful, and as you're coming through as a young player, be educated about it.
Daniel, I guess you'd have many stories to tell, but from your own point of view, for lessons that you can teach people that are listening to us this morning, how did things start to get out of control for yourself? Was there a trigger point or a moment that you can remember that you think, this is actually getting out of control? Yeah,
probably. And like Lee said before, I do a few talks with the Victory and a few other football clubs around town, and it's more about how it grows without you sort of realising it, and probably the key signs are if you. For myself, it was sort of lying, keeping secrets, and borrowing money, all that type of stuff that that just was leading me down the wrong track. And look, I'm next month I'm sort of 3 years clean, and that's been a battle, and I wish I knew then what I know now and how I can live my life. And
how hard was that battle, Daniel?
Yeah, it was.
Over the last 3 years.
Yeah, it's been it's obviously easier now, but it got to a pretty rough stage where there were some thoughts there that my family, I've got a wife and 2 kids, they'd be better off without me and that type of stuff. But look, it's I think if there is people out there that are in the midst of a gambling addiction or think they may have a problem, I think it's the shame and the guilt attached with it, and speaking up and putting your hand up and asking for help. But I think people are a lot more understanding, and there's help out there for people that have an issue. And I think it's just getting past that and saying we're not perfect, and putting your hand up and saying how can I fix this situation. Did
you ever get to a stage, Daniel, you thought that your life wasn't worth living?
Yeah, I did a newspaper article probably a couple of years ago now with the Herald Sun, and Mark Robinson asked that question, and truthfully, I didn't seriously consider doing anything drastic like that, but I definitely thought that what is it all worth it, and my wife and eldest daughter at that time will be definitely better off without me, but didn't take it any further from there.
So looking back at your experience, did you start to bet outside your means? Did you try to bet bigger than your income was saying you could?
Yeah, the worst thing that could happen to me was betting getting introduced to a bookmaker, betting large early and having a win, and then thinking you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and then the chase from there. And look, all the dramas, financial dramas I created in my life was from gambling and how I live my life, and I used to tell myself crazily that I didn't want to gamble anymore, but I still had that debt, so I'll just chase that and one big win, and then I'd quit, and never actually happened. Just dug a bigger hole.
So is it one of those things, Daniel, and I've often thought this about people that do get in trouble from that are athletes, that the competitiveness that is in your personality, you're naturally competitive as a footballer, and you're a really good footballer at Melbourne. Does that play a part for some gamblers that do have problems? And I think all of us that love to have a punt at times, that it's not just necessarily about losing money, but it's actually that your judgment's not right, and that frustrates you, and you want to prove that you were right. So it's not just about money. Does that become a bit of an issue? I hope I'm making sense.
No, that's a really good question. We spoke about it. We had the launch yesterday, and we spoke about that, about why it is that sometimes sportsmen get themselves in trouble, and that's what I said for myself. It was the competitiveness, and I didn't want to let it get a hold of me, and
not wanting to lose. I guess.
Not wanting to lose, and I just missed here, or next time it won't be the case. And I was, especially early on, I was really into horse racing and all that type of stuff, and I'd study the form and all that type of stuff, and I just, like anything, you just study harder, and it definitely was that competitive nature of it that I don't want it to beat me, and then it's not until the fog clears, if you like, I went to an addiction treatment centre, and that you sort of see how it really is, and the damage that you've caused to those close to you.
I think it's a great example of probably the modern footballer being exposed to so much idle time. When you've got idle time and you haven't got another job to fall back on, because let's face it, the average age of an AFL footballer is about 3 to 4 years.
Yep.
Some survive for 10 years, very few survive for 15 years.
Yep.
And in that period when you're bringing good money in, if you've got idle time, you try to do something with it. If there's any advice you could give to the modern age footballer, is it try to get a balance of study / university, or even a part-time job in your position?
Yeah, look, and they're getting better at it, and the clubs are, I know there's particular clubs that if they get a day off that they have to get from the Players Association, that they got schooling, they have to be doing something, or a part-time job. So yeah, the advice would be, and I've been to most AFL clubs, and it'd be about, for me now, spare time is pretty much my worst enemy. So I work full time, and I've got football and a few other things that I do, and these things. So yeah, it's definitely a big thing. And back in my day, that's what it was. You trained in the morning and then go home and create some damage. I was doing, and then go back to training in the afternoon. Look, they're at the club a lot more these days, but definitely spare time. They can't drink. They can't do other things that their mates are doing, and and again, this message isn't. There's no problems with having the punt. I've got a lot of mates and family who punt, and that's fine. As long as it's done responsibly. I couldn't pull up, and I think the education now that they're getting, and that Lee spoke about, you can't save people from themselves, but hopefully we've given them enough information.
That's a good point you make, and idle time's a devil's playground sometimes.
We'll take a break and come back and discuss this further, and particularly about trying to come up with ways and techniques and tactics, I guess, to try and make sure that it doesn't grab hold. It is 11 to 8, back with more shortly.
This is RSN Breakfast. Did you know?